4 o'clock? Really want to.
All right, we're recording now.
For what?
You too. Order is on.
Can everyone be here?
What's that? April's going to be late. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have plus the 2. Lynn and the mayor make it's more than enough for a quorum.
Terry?
I didn't hear back.
I think he's gone.
Mayor's the chair of the meeting. She'll run it. OEM.
Here I am.
Is Lynn here as well?
No, I'm actually the emergency services director. and
Okay, great.
Lynn had been delegated as that.
Gotcha.
For a while.
All right. I'm waiting. The mayor is the chair of this meeting. She's outside. I'm not just looking at you.
What's happening?
What's the weather like?
It's actually kind of balmy.
Heat wave coming through.
Oh, sure.
Here, there's a.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Anybody
I
else
can't
wants?
even remember the last time this thing met.
Needs a copy of this. There's a down here. Yeah. But actually, there's a bunch of them. There's a. Just gonna sit right.
I know, I'm so sorry, but otherwise we can't see you. Peter, you want to sit at the table? Follow? You're the person. You're the person in charge. Thank you, Bill. And do we have, where is our police? Police! Hi, Barbara.
You're expecting trouble?
No, I'm not expecting trouble.
You want the police?
Well, I just thought it would be good if he was in the room if there were some requests. Thank you for all coming here today. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Bill. We have been meeting, providing what the city provided, which was severe weather shelter for a limited period of time. That was our goal. And I have to say thank you to a lot of the people around this room who actually staff the shelter. We were able to do that. And I really appreciate that because we don't have a health department. We don't have the resources to pull on our staff to do it. We had to get just our staff to volunteer, including executive staff. And I really appreciated that. So we have had conversations. Is Jack still here? Yeah.
Right over here.
Oh, okay. So we've had a lot of conversations back and forth about what's going to happen. And I just wanted to make sure that the council understands when we called for the emergency shelter, what we used was criteria. So we didn't just decide we were going to do it. We worked with our emergency manager, Lynn Sturban, and determined that the conditions were right for us to open an emergency weather shelter, a shelter for weather, and that these criteria would be used both to determine when it opened and when it closed. So we have, used that criteria all along. We continue to work with Homes Now on how to reopen their tent encampment, because that's another commitment we made to them earlier on. And we also are working with Fountain Church to expand the number of beds that they can use in their facility, should there be any more emergency or anyone else who wants to go use that facility. So just so you know, there are criteria we use. I might kind of drill this into the ground, but I think it's very important as an agency that is responsible to the public that we use rules when we make decisions, and we did. Secondly, we have two actual choices that we can use to decide whether or not, oh, and I told Jack that we needed something in writing, so I received this from the county saying that the county council, based on Barry Buchanan's motion, is that in coordination with the city of Bellingham, once the city makes a permitting decision at 4 a.m., the county makes every effort to open the civic center garden room so it's available and staffed for an immediate shelter. And that's the county council's prerogative to do that. We have closed our shelter because we don't believe that there's a severe weather emergency right now. And that's the only reason we opened ours. I don't know if yours is open for a different purpose or not. If it's open to be a longer term shelter or a short term shelter, but anyway, that was the decision that we made. We have two options of what to do with our proclamation of emergency. We could terminate it right now, and that would mean that the county would have to start all over through all the permitting that we have already done to open a shelter. And the other way is to amend our emergency proclamation to make sure the county doesn't have to do that, to facilitate the county being able to open a shelter. My recommendation to you is that we do the amended proclamation because we need to be partners with the county if they want to do what we did. And this allows you to do it on a temporary basis. I think Lynn said 30 days.
As long as the proclamation,
Or as long as the proclamation lasts. So this is kind of, our proclamation now is somewhat triggered on what the county does because they still have countywide, you still have a countywide emergency. But in the city of Bellingham, we don't have that emergency. So, anyway, so this allows you to open a shelter. The details will probably have to be discussed, but I think it's for either forever or for a time certain. But if it's going to be longer than a certain amount of time, longer than the emergency is in place, then you would have to, you could still use it, but you would have to start going through the process that we went through to permit the rest of the shelters that we had, if they're not emergency, if they're long-term. So we can help with that. We're the permitting agency, and we don't expect you to know how to do it, and we know how to do it, so that's kind of that. The other thing that we've done is we have pre-inspected the building, so we already know the fire said, well, Bill, I'll let you, why don't you say what fire did, since I didn't do what fire did.
As far as for the garden room, just to be able to evaluate that for the purpose that the county might be looking for a shelter, our life safety division took a look at that and determined that could be used for that use.
Mm-hmm. So I'm prepared today to sign that so that I hear your council said they wanted to open it up today. I know how difficult that's going to be because we actually put ours in place by scrambling, and we had a whole day long, and you don't have that. But we have a template for you to use. Okay, so we have that, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I want to pass it out to the council members, and the amended proclamation, and that, and we already sent the criteria. So how did we staff ours? Our emergency manager was the point. We did not have trained volunteers. In order, since we did not have trained volunteers, we made sure that we had a security presence, which in our case was the police, so that the people that stayed in our shelter would be safe. Because we were using whoever from my office and the department heads and council walked in the door. The other thing is, we were the staff. There's two requests from the county executive. One is that they likely will require staffing and law enforcement similar to maritime. That's true, but we are in no position to provide that. We used our police department. Sheriff Elfo's here. We might have to talk to him about that. Or if you use CERT volunteers, which we didn't have at the time, then they're trained. if there's trained volunteers used, you wouldn't need to involve law enforcement. So with that, we'll do anything we can to make it easy if you want to open a shelter, and we'd love to have a conversation with you about the long term, what we're all talking about with this. But at this point in time, we're here to do the administrative things that you need us to do. We're prepared to do them right now so that there doesn't have to be a gap. And it's a very difficult thing to do, you guys. And we appreciate all the community help that supported us in putting this forward. But it was severe weather, temporary, based on emergency conditions. And those conditions do not exist anymore. Weather conditions do not exist anymore, or do capacity conditions. They're choice conditions that still are concerned, and that way maybe this will be another choice for them.
May I just?
Not yet, no. We're gonna let the council talk first because
fine.
they have to take the
Thank you.
action on this. So council, do you have any more information you need, or would you like us to do something different? Because we're happy to, this is really at the authority of the council. Ann?
So just to be straight here, so this amendment allows for the permits that we used to be transferred over to the county for a shelter use. Is that?
I'll let Peter
What's
answer
the
that. It's been
technical-
very complicated to figure out how to do this the most expedient way.
So the original proclamation referenced various statutes that authorized you to overcome certain normal rules, permitting, procurement. This proclamation, if confirmed by the Emergency Services Council, would continue that authority, and to the extent the county wants some sort of permitting authority, it's not really a permit, it's authorization under the mayor's emergency powers to authorize that use.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
I certainly support continuing the emergency proclamation in a manner that allows the county to go forward with opening their own shelter. And I also agree with you that the county can follow our model if they would like. It was a pretty good model considering we are inventing it as we went. I think that they should rely upon their own staff and volunteers. We have some volunteers that showed up that might want to volunteer for them instead, and I think they should also rely upon their own law enforcement. I think we discovered that a minimal presence was enough. So I have no issue with that part of the proposal whatsoever.
Do we need a motion, Mayor?
Yeah, and let me just say, I think that all of these actions that we have right now in the cold weather indicate that we need to work together closer to do something long-term. We were lucky because we put in place the library, the Fountain Community Church, and then we pulled together the shelter. But the things we plan for ahead that we might not have to use put us in a much better position to help people when they need help. And so we had that work group that Barry put together, but nothing specific. I didn't hear anything specific. We had specific goals that came out, and we did them. And I think it would help if both of us together looked at that, and we determined our lanes of work. I mean, we are not a social service agency, even though we put together lots of money to contribute to those agencies that are doing the work. But we don't have a health department. We don't have the other things that support mental health and other things. We don't have staff that does that. That's not part of the city's requirements, not requirements, but commitments. So, anybody else have something? Pinky?
Yeah, I'm totally in support of however we can make this happen with the county. I just am confused about something because we, as the city, are not going to do an emergency shelter.
Well, we did do one.
Continue. Sorry.
Yes.
Continue. But this building is in the city.
Right.
And so if it's county people that are feeling the need, if I'm understanding that correctly, I'm just curious, in the city, we're providing a shelter, but is there something else in the county? Or like, I'm kind of confused on the need. If we aren't seeing a need in the city, then why is the county doing something in the city versus the county?
Because I think, and I'll let the county, maybe the executive or the council president answer that, but it was my understanding that the county still has a countywide emergency in place. And in order for all we know, there'll be people in the county that don't have a place, that need to have somewhere to go. This is county property, so really is a county project. But this is where people and services are also. That's what people say, why are so many people in Bellingham? Because we want to help them, and we have the services and the facilities and the beds in the city. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be out in the county, but I think this county's the one to determine, because this is their property and they can assign to it what they want. I mean, it's not necessarily for us to say, no, you can't have a shelter here. We can say that. We can say we're going to declare, that our emergency's over, and they'd be left to their own devices to figure out what they wanted to do. They wouldn't be able to do it in time.
May I have a follow-up question? So I guess in getting to that, I'm just like, if it's the need, if there's still people in the city that are going to this, whether or not this is a partnership or should be a partnership or just a county thing, if we're still trying to help people here in the city.
I think if there was, we had someone sleep outside the Maritime Heritage Park last night because they didn't, and they were invited in. They didn't want to come in because they said it's not that cold. Police were trying to pick people up and bring them to the shelter, and the people that they found chose not to come to our shelter. There could have been a million reasons why, but they chose not to come. So I think in the city's position, if we go back to what are our responsibilities, they are the ones that I've laid out for you, and people can volunteer, obviously. Because we've been trying to support Winter Haven too, not with money, but with our donations, and their residents out there have vouchers, so they're in a place to be now. They're not outside, but hopefully the Winter Haven tent encampment will be open soon. But so we could. I mean, it's entirely up to you. I'm trying just to tell you what. That we'll keep our emergency open so that we can help the county in the way we can help the county. But what else could we do? I don't understand maybe what you're thinking of. Why don't you tell me?
Well, I guess I'm just asking how we can be involved and continue to help, and what we can do as the city to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to support this, because
I think if there are gaps, Pinky, in what the county can do, I think that definitely the city could look to see what are the gaps. But I think that both the county and the city have responsibilities to come up with the plans. Hopefully our plans will be same plan at some time, be easier. But I guess I would need specific suggestions about what you think, or the county, what they think that we could do. I guess I think we came up with our own police, so I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for our police to staff there. If you do, just a second, Barbara, if you do, then you guys decide, but it was very difficult for us to pull people off shift, as it will be for the county to pull people off shift to be there. We started thinking about, do we hire, security guards, or how do we train people so that we don't need that level of security, but in a short period of time, it's very difficult to do. We do not have city staff that could do it. We rely on Lynn and Shalise and the emergency management to look at their cert lists, etc., and try to find people, and it was very difficult, very difficult. That's why many of us stepped in, because we couldn't find other people to do it. Can I let Barbara?
Sure.
Barbara?
Well, I think the best idea of all is to keep one or all of yours open and let ours be open. And we got tons of volunteers out there, and unless I misunderstood what the sheriff said, he said being a volunteer for a crisis on a, just emergency basis, it's a background check. It's not all that other stuff.
Well,
So-
and it depends on the level of security that you want. But let me just tell you, right now we're going through something at the federal level where there isn't an emergency in a location, and this is the cold weather. And someone is using an emergency proclamation to basically do whatever they want. And in the city of Bellingham, we're trying to have reasons for why we call an emergency, because pretty soon we could call an emergency for anything then.
And that wasn't what I was talking, I'm talking about severe weather.
Yeah, but we don't have severe weather in the city anymore.
How do you, I think it's still severe.
Well, did you read the criteria? There's a lot of criteria that determines that, but it's also, it's a combination. It's not just severe weather. There may be places in the county where there's still problems, but if you look at the criteria that we're using, that we use to open the shelter and that we're using to close the shelter, it's not severe weather. But that's not the only thing we use. We had between 5 and 7 people in our shelter, and we had a lot of trouble finding volunteers. So if you have better luck with that, that's great.
No, the only concern I have is, I don't believe there's enough shelters now. If you guys shut down, we may take over what you've got, but there's still gonna be that need. So,
Well,
I
there's still-
haven't read what you consider
Yeah.
severe weather, but I.
Just so you know, Barbara, there's always been capacity available, but there have been choices that people don't want to be there.
Yeah.
But there's been places for everybody. There have been places for women at Fountain Church. They're not going to do the men anymore, so they have more room for women, which is why we made our shelter men only, so that we could fit more men in the shelter. But we still only had 5 the first night, 7 the second night, and 7 the third night. And Homes Now, I think, was trying very hard to find people out in the cold to bring them to our shelter, and they couldn't find people either that wanted to come. We asked them why. I don't know why.
Well, I don't understand why, okay, tomorrow night's supposed to be bad, worse than, today is not my idea of okay weather,
Where's
but
Lynn?
tomorrow night's supposed to be really bad. And it's a weekend.
Sure. Lynn's not here. You're here, Bill? Are you the emergency management?
And the
So what-
meteorologist.
I'll just show you my phone.
On my side job.
It's gonna be 24 degrees on Sunday night.
24 degrees.
That's pretty dang cold.
Right.
People are wet too, I'd like to add that.
Well, and I think that we're going based on what our emergency manager says. So one of the reasons why we're working really hard for the county to be able to open their shelter is so that nobody will be left out. Okay?
Just show me the calendar.
I know, I brought her up.
She can
Sarah
sit right
B.
here. Come over here and sit. I'll stand.
Sarah B, right?
Beans.
Beans.
Yeah.
No longer meets the
Have a seat, Sarah.
criteria that we have for an emergency shelter.
Okay. Michael?
I have 3 points I would like to see addressed. One of them was just brought to the front. This memo here says with low temperatures not falling below freezing, yet when the county council looked at the weather forecast, they saw it falling to the 20s. And so I'm just wondering whether or not our factual basis for our own internal determination is current. That's one question. The other issue is timing. If the city really does close a severe weather shelter right now, will the county facility be up and running tonight? If not, we have a timing problem. And the third issue I'd like to kind of see is kind of the question, why does the county council see an urgent need for shelter options and other people don't? And I think it turns on different understandings of capacity and the adequacy of shelter options. And I think that discussion about capacity and adequacy is not a matter of simple math. I think it's subtler than that. And to make a proper
We had
decision...
20 from our shelter that is closed tonight. So 20 will be coming out onto the streets.
Please,
that were
Marcus.
sheltered.
Please, Marcus. So I would like us to move away from a simple mathematics about whether or not there's a number of beds, but to a discussion more of the adequacy of the shelter options that are being offered.
And that is your prerogative to do that. We what I would say is, if you decide to keep our shelter open without the severe weather requirements or capacity requirements, I don't know how we will staff it, because I will not ask my administrative assistant to spend her third night there. We were supposed to have volunteers through the CERT, through our emergency management, which is, as far as Lynn knows, of course she's new, this is one of the first times we've ever dealt with housing and weather. We're doing pipeline explosions and, other kinds of emergencies. So I don't think that that's the most familiar emergency for them to work with all on its own. But I don't know how we would staff it if we left it open tonight. And we were told that there were going to be a whole bunch of people this week. And we're open and we were welcoming people, and they didn't come.
They were already sheltered.
Okay.
Out in the county, up to 31 night. So that's where they were.
That's close.
Yeah,
Well,
it's close
close
now, I know,
tonight.
but that's where they were.
And we won't be able to handle 31. I think, how many men were out there? I'll ask you.
Oh, I don't know the exact numbers out there. They're mostly men out
It
in the
was
shelter.
probably close to 20 out of the 30 on that big night. We put about 21 in last night, and it's probably like 80% men.
And we still have people in motels.
That will be coming out.
So that's where they are. They're
They will be
sheltered
coming
Why
out
would the
next
people
week.
come?
temporarily, and they're
We
coming
can't
out
afford it
next
any
week.
longer. We don't have the.
Do I need to make another contribution
It's,
to help you?
If that's
Oh.
something you'd like to do, that's of your own accord, but
Of course it is.
the voucher system that they have in place with the Opportunity Council is restricted to only families with kids, so they don't
I
have
understand that. That's why I gave you a contribution before, so you could use it any way you wanted.
Well, we appreciate it, but many of us are going on $1,500 that we have contributed to, aside from awake night after night after night. And it's
I know.
one thing to think the homeless, it's another thing to know these people now. By now we know them.
I know the
No,
people that
there's-
were at our shelter. I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
And
There are
the
people.
social
Yeah.
aspect, the social worker aspect of this is really taxing for us.
Can we
So
stop
we're about
calling it a
spent.
shelter? Can we start calling it a warming center, because it's for the general public at large? We actually were picking up people that were also stranded in our downtown area that couldn't get home because they didn't have a vehicle to get home, so we were doing Good Samaritan rides as well
Do that
as for
too.
the general public.
Citizen stuff. Yep.
So if we could just start calling it a warming center for emergency weather, that would be a lot better than calling it a
And,
shelter.
and we had this discussion, and we were told we couldn't call it a warming shelter if we wanted to
We
have
have
people
passed
spending the night.
Tonight.
So I'm sorry, that's
You have to amend
government. There's nothing I can do about that.
Keep it
Yeah. So right now, we're trying to determine if the council wants to use the criteria to expedite the county's use of their property to have a shelter bigger than what we can handle. And, yeah. And if you don't want to do this, then I need specific suggestions about what you would like me to accomplish that's not this. And just know that I don't know if I can personally open a shelter or if Lynn can. All of our staff has been the same way as you are. And I let two of them go home today because they've been up the whole week too. Dan?
Two questions. What's the, is CERT ready to go with volunteers? And if so, how many? And where does COAD fit into this? And then there was another group called 4x4.
Come on in, guys.
Search and rescue. There were 3 volunteer groups that the claim was made that there were several hundred volunteers that were associated with these groups.
They didn't seem available to Lynn, so maybe Sheriff can answer that.
The mayor, when we heard that the city was closing the shelters, we released the 11 volunteers we had scheduled this weekend. I didn't know the county was going to open shelter.
We didn't know that either, Bill, so.
So we don't have that staff available. And, I just wanted to make a comment, if I could, on the police department.
Sure.
As opposed to putting deputies there. Our deputies are out in the unincorporated areas primarily, and we have very low staffing, and the city has their challenges, but it's the Bellingham officers that are really familiar with these folks and have good
They are.
rapport with them and good relationships with them.
They do.
And I think it would make a lot more sense to have
Sorry,
the,
I wasn't asking you to, sorry, Bill. I wasn't asking you to step out, I just wanted to move away from other council members.
oh,
Sorry, Bill.
it would make more sense to have a police officer assigned And the other point I wanted to make
I
is,
just want you to know, Bill,
Yeah.
that's difficult for us too, because we're understaffed. We were getting ready to look about hiring a security guard, because our police are trying to do the same thing your sheriffs are trying to do, only with more people in a concentrated area, and where we get a lot of the impact from the county because people don't have services out
it's
there.
just difficult on the short notice to be able to prepare to do that in an adequate way without a smooth handoff.
I understand that entirely, which is why I suggest that we do need to have a conversation about this. And I think April's made a suggestion. We're already working on how do we put our own, how do we all work off the same page so we're not doing two separate things and impacting each other ways that we don't mean to. So,
If I could too
sure,
say that.
go ahead.
The emergency declaration, from my understanding, that the county executive issued and that myself and the prosecutor signed, only has applicability in unincorporated Whatcom County.
Which is
So-
why we're only amending ours and we're not suspending.
Right, our emergency management office, Division of Emergency Management in the Sheriff's Office does not have any authority, jurisdiction to work within the city. Our deputies would have authority, but not emergency management.
And I guess the question I'd ask is if we're using a county facility at the direction of the county, then wouldn't the county want to staff with their volunteers or the people that they have? Because we didn't, if we made that choice, then I think we did. We made the choice, we ran the shelter. And we didn't ask for the county to do it. And we'll do whatever we can, and we'll give you volunteers, and maybe some of us will like to volunteer.
I was just speaking to the applicability of the order.
Well, that's why we're not.
The authority of our emergency management.
Yeah, we're not terminating our order because we want it to support what you have going so that there is a full city, county coverage. Barbara?
At our meeting that we just had, a number of us, including myself, said we would volunteer, and I think most of us have background checks, and maybe if the city council were interested in volunteering too, we could cover this all.
Well, when we were opening our shelter, Lynn Sturbins, our emergency manager, was organizing this. She was our point person, and she was the one that was getting everything together because we started out with everybody doing their own thing, and it was extremely frustrating and extremely inefficient. So if Clarice, I knew I'd do that. If Celise or someone from the county is willing to do that, that's the help that we could give you. If people want to volunteer, give us your volunteers, expedite your permitting. We can do all that stuff. But we can't take the lead because I sent Lynn home.
I don't mean for you to take the lead. I'm saying
Well,
we should
but
both
other
the city and the
people-
county work together and both keep both facilities.
We're not going to keep our facility open, Barbara, because it doesn't meet our criteria.
Well, maybe you need to change your criteria.
Yes. I don't think we're going to do that, and if there was an expectation from council that somehow we're going to have two shelters open, I personally think that's more beds than we're going to need in the city, and you have a bigger facility, so I think, that makes more sense than having two open and double everything up. You don't need too many staff to do this, but you definitely need enough staff to do it. Pinky.
I'm wondering, Mayor, if the county could give us a little overview of what, obviously, this process just happened for them and what they see for this shelter.
Maybe what their goals are.
Yeah,
I
and
think
what their
that's important.
expectations of our support or whatever it is. I'd like to get a clearer understanding of that.
Who would like to speak for the county? Are you the chair?
I am the chair, but we now have a quorum, and I was not the maker of the motion, so I will defer to Mr. Buchanan, and I shall remain silent.
Okay, Barry, you want to come to the table?
The intent of the motion was to quickly get something open because we are expecting another cold weather event in the next few days. And hearing that the city had closed down, that was new to all of us today, as well as some your own folks didn't find that out until today. It became very evident that something needs to be done. So, not having any details on exactly how to put it together, the council wanted to lay the groundwork to get through this process here. And one at a time, as we see a hurdle, we jump it. And to be able to have the authority to set up an additional shelter here in Bellingham.
And I think with what the city's put together, you can do that.
Yes, and we really appreciate and will benefit greatly from the work you've already done.
And then we also have in place a lot of information that is already covered in how you apply for a shelter, how long you want to have it, how long you have to apply, all that kind of stuff. And we're ready to help you do all that. We just can't staff it. I mean, we can't staff it because we don't have staff. April, you're looking at me funny.
Oh, I don't know the part, because I apologize with the emergency and kids and everything. What does not, are you saying it's because of snow and ice on this is why we no longer conform to keeping a shelter open?
No, we say you look at all of these together. That's the one thing that we learned from our emergency manager is it's not one measurement that says whether you open or close a shelter. It's lots of weighing things together. One is obviously the weather, and the weather, the compilation of the weather is one thing. The second thing is the capacity. So it's all of this.
Yeah.
It's all of this. Are the schools open? Is the city open? Makes a difference in the weather condition, but that's not all it is.
Okay.
Jean.
I'm going to make a motion that we amend the proclamation of emergency.
Second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Dan?
What is the capacity of the Garden Street Center?
I don't know.
41.
It says 41 on the sheet.
All right.
Okay, because I think that's in the thing I'm going to sign that says you can use the building. Yeah. Just one second. Who else at the table had their hand up? Michael?
I will support the motion to amend the emergency proclamation to allow the county to open a shelter of their own, but I remain uncomfortable with the timing and the city's closure of our shelter.
Well, go ahead and make a different motion then, Michael.
No, I'm going to support this motion.
You can open up our shelter right now.
You can make a second motion.
I'd say open it then.
It's a separate motion.
I don't think it's necessary. I think we need to work together.
Yeah.
All right. Pinky.
I understand and feel the same way about us closing our shelter, but this has a 41 bed capacity. I would rather, with all the limited resources we have, that we work together on this. So our shelter doesn't only holds a few people. It doesn't sound like that's going to be enough capacity. So I would rather share resources in any way we can. I will personally help if I can, and but I would like, if there's any way, even if it's voluntary, but I would like us to see us work together. And one shelter, I think, causes a lot less staff needs, and
it will cause a lot less.
And this has a
staff
much
needs.
bigger capacity, so I don't want to leave people on the street.
No, I don't either. So, but you're supporting.
But I will support the amendment.
Second, Barbara. April.
I just need to be brought up a little bit more to speed. So the amendment is what you're presenting to us that will close our shelter tonight?
No,
No.
it just allows
Okay.
the county to do their
Okay,
permitting.
yeah, I'm
It
fine
allows
with that.
us to still keep our proclamation open in working with the county on whatever the decision is that they.
So two pieces, and I think why this is missing and why we need to have a future conversation after we can get out of crisis mode on partnering together and making sure that we have a specific response, because this addresses your typical emergency needs for people that are getting displaced from their homes. This doesn't address emergency needs for people that are houseless. And I think that's where the confusion comes in when we try to bring all these things together and we're looking at it from our old lens of this is when people have been displaced from their homes, they have power outages, we don't have food. So I think when we look at this, we have to take into account this is specific, and the work that we need to do in the future is specific to people who are unhoused.
Yeah.
Especially, okay, so I just want to make that point that when we look at these documents, we need to look through that new lens. And it's why I hope that partnership will specifically be for inclement weather days and people who are unsheltered.
Well, I hope the
So
discussion will actually be for permanent shelters that people can be in all the time.
that's
I mean,
of course
we're
the next
so
step.
emergency mode right now that we're not taking care of the need.
The other question I have for Sheriff Uffel, you might recall this, and I know I shared it with you, staff, is that my recollection is the food bank received a significant amount of funding so that it could be used for county and city in events of emergency. It is set up close to bus route. It has accessibility of food, space. Did you all just settle on the Garden Street space, or have you considered a place like that already has in its makeup to be utilized in crisis for county and city?
We've not done really any, I'm not familiar with what the food bank is doing specifically.
It was just when it was built. They built it to a certain standard. We gave monies to it to specifically make it for a crisis. So, if you all want to use the garden center, I just want to make sure that we've looked at all. Food bank already has food. It's set up to service a lot of different people.
Normally, for housing people in any emergency, we have traditionally relied on our plans on the American Red Cross that uses schools that have cafeterias, that have bank food and feeding capacities. But in speaking to them recently, we found that they're not postured to be able to deal with
They've really got
homeless
cut down.
population.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So that's kind of been a change in the paradigm, and that's why.
Did you all consider? Is it just Garden Street for? I'm just trying to
That's
understand.
really, we
Okay.
took a very quick inventory in our brains of what we had available, and that was close to the downtown core, close to what's, Winter Haven and things that are going on.
They
So we
own the
just
building.
picked
Yeah,
theirs.
I'll support the amendment. I'm with Pinky and everybody else here. I think we got to figure out, we just have to do it in transparency, and we have to follow our rules and our charter with quorums and other things. We need to be very careful in this process that we don't create any new confusion. So I think with some lawyers in the room, we'll have to figure out how we can quickly come together to make some decisions around how do we go from here working together as a team.
Well, this was at the recommendation of the attorneys based
Yeah,
on we are
okay.
the emergency
I just
management.
careful with the county and quorums and be respectful that we're not making decisions in here that are supposed to be made with plenty of notice to meetings. So I'll support that, but there's going to have to be a second conversation as to how we're going to have something open tonight and then into the future, and then how we're going to rapidly work toward this change and bringing crisis response to the emergency management, which I really appreciate your direction in doing that. It's not a planning issue.
So what I guess the other thing I'd say is that we were waiting for the county to take action before we brought any of this forward, though we did share it with Jack and Ty.
Okay. All right.
Can we vote?
Call the vote?
Good idea.
I mean, you can still talk, but we can.
Oh, we voted
Yeah.
too? Okay.
We all have to.
All in, would you like us to vote
I
first?
don't have anything here that shows me what the definition of severe weather is, unless I'm missing it. And the other thing is, we may have a different charter type than you guys have, but I've tried to bring it up over and over that we're the health board and we should have the authority to do these things.
That's the
And I
health
keep being told, no, we don't. We're the legislative branch. So I just don't know.
I understand, Barbara. I absolutely understand the communication about what we're gonna do when we're in an emergency should not be happening when we're in an emergency.
I agree.
So, okay.
But
we are.
We're the severe weather.
Yeah.
That's it, the severe weather
Definition.
criteria that we use is in that definition that I gave you.
Oh, I don't have those.
Okay.
Okay. Is the council ready to vote?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of amending our emergency resolution, or our emergency, what's it called? Proclamation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, we've amended that. Then, next, Michael.
Yeah, I would like to turn to what April called that second conversation about what happens tonight. If the county doesn't receive authorization, doesn't activate adequate volunteers, find adequate safety protections by tonight, and we've closed ours, as of now, I think we've created a problem we could have avoided. So either we stay open or we get a guarantee that they're going to be open in time. In my
Well,
mind.
everyone who would be helping, who has helped, who has volunteered at our center, then should be over at the county, helping them open theirs, because it's bigger, and from what Marcus says, we're gonna have more people than can fit in our shelter.
I just this morning when I dropped them off, I directed the men to the men's shelter, expecting it to be open for them. So they'll be around, and that they're going to be looking for a place.
Mhm. Because we're gonna have to do everything the county's gonna have to do right now, today, to try to reopen our shelter, because we didn't have enough people to keep it open. And that's according to our emergency manager, who I wish was here, but she's home sleeping, and I think that's okay. So everything's in place for the doors to open there. That's kind of what happened with ours. We can move, what we have, the mats, the blankets that we borrowed, whatever else, because there really isn't much there to do it. It's just that you have a bigger spot.
Executive allows.
Okay, I'm gonna let April go and then Jack.
Well,
April?
I just let's be in the interest of time and the people that everybody's concerned with here. Is that my understanding is when Lynn opened the very first day at 6 o'clock, she did a quick training for everybody that was involved. So it's 4:45, and it sounds like there's a lot of people in here that would like to volunteer and move forward that will need that training that Lynn provided. So I don't know if this other emergency
It wasn't
manager.
as training as much as it was just going over the rules.
Okay.
She had,
Oh, great.
She had.
So we have that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's available to
So-
to your emergency management, because she worked with Shalise when she developed it, and then we had rules which were pretty simple. The only thing, we didn't ask people's names, we didn't ask anything about them unless, we asked if they had a weapon, and we asked them, our police didn't want to confiscate weapons, so we asked that if they had a weapon, that we had envelopes where they would put it with their name on it, and we had a box that we would put them in, and I think we confiscated one knife in 3 days. So
Okay, and I
it
think,
wasn't a
so
weapon
just in the
problem.
interest and knowing the quorum and that we got to be respectful of the council not being able to make it, it is appropriate, I think, to have Jack, and then to see, at this point, you and Jack can talk, and it's okay.
Oh, Jack and I have
We
talked.
can't really talk with
Jack,
them.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and everybody. I really don't have a whole lot to say. I probably said things that I shouldn't have over at the Whatcom County Council a few minutes ago. Obviously, in the interest of the direction that the council has put the administration in, getting the garden room ready and available is appropriate, and thank you for the emergency proclamation to do that. With that said, at 11:30 today, it was a bit of a shock to me that with Bellingham was going to be closed, which is the mayor's right under the criteria to do that. Support her decision on that. Not realizing what the impact of that was with, the direction from our council to have a shelter open tonight. I don't know how I'm going to try to organize to do that. I've got prosecuting attorney here to take a look and make sure that we have the legal authority. Eric was here.
Richie is standing outside.
He stepped out. We have Karen Frakes, Deputy Chief Civil, so we have the organization. We have to put some protection in place, and we have to make this all work. I don't know whether we're going to do it or not. It would have been nice had I had a little bit more time to think about it, to take our 11 CERT volunteers that we have now wished them well for the weekend, and to be able to organize and possibly keep the other one open for a day as we made the transition through it. But now we have this, we have abrupt end.
Okay.
Decisions are what they are, and we're there. We're going to try. I guess a question that I have for the city of Bellingham, now that we open this and we provide capacity, when the weather gets really cold here in a couple days again, is our capacity going to, because you don't have capacity issues, is Bellingham going to be part of the game down the road?
And I would say yes. If we hit the same conditions that we had when we opened our shelter, we will open it again.
And
So
so,
it's-
you know, we're
it's-
down to 23 degrees in 2 nights again, which is basically where we're at. We aren't maybe have the snow with it, but for me, it's,
Wet and cold.
for me, as we're still right somewhat into the middle of the emergency. So, hey, I'm gonna just tell everybody, I'm gonna do what I can. I feel a little bit under pressure. I know that everybody that was in my office after the council made their motion, we're all looking at each other perplexed on how we're gonna.
I know exactly how that feels, Jack.
Yeah, well, and the coordination could have probably been,
A lot
and,
better.
and the handoff on this could have been better than what it was. So I'm not gonna say anything more than that. You know, I got facilities changing the master locks on trying to get the master locks on doors. I don't know whether I can rely upon law enforcement, but as with Bellingham, we can't put a bunch of volunteers in there without having some professional services around it. And don't know whether, we don't own cots, we don't know where they're at.
We didn't use cots, so we'll share our
well,
what we have with you.
2 hours and 10 minutes, I guess. And it's unfortunate that we're put into a position that we have 2 hours and 10 minutes.
And I would just say, from my side, this is something we've been talking about for months, so I'm kind of annoyed with this too. You're not the only one. Because we could have planned farther ahead than we did. We had a whole work group. We wrote a plan. I would have liked to have seen something from the county too, from the members of that group, and I asked. So I think that there was a lot of not planning ahead on a lot of parts, but I feel like we did have a plan in place and we're trying to implement it. Okay, so
Thank you, everybody. I got work to do.
Thank you, Jack. All right. Is there anything else that we as a board need to discuss, or Tyler's Clarice in charge now when Lynn's not here, or is Bill in charge? Who's in charge?
No.
Wally Cost.
the county.
Oh, you mean the county?
Yeah.
County.
Wally Cost.
Okay, and in the city, who's in charge, Bill?
Lynn and I.
Okay, so
But they're in charge of emergency management. I'm not sure how this is going to be structured, because this really isn't an emergency management issue in the city limits. I don't know, we'll have to discuss internally in our organization. Is this a health department? Is it and find the right organization with the resources.
But right now, at least with the rules that are in the city, not maybe the county, but the city, you are able to do whatever you need to do within the city. Because I'm going to sign this right now that says you can. In using this building, you can do whatever you need to do. So, Barbara?
One last request, maybe a little compromise here. Maybe the city could or would leave your facility open tonight and have the county take it over tomorrow. I'm a little concerned about what Jack said.
I understand entirely, and one of the options was that we would just leave it open for one more night, and then we do that. And I was outvoted.
You were outvoted?
No. It made sense.
Who voted?
Oh, I'm teasing. It's not a good time to tease. No, but I think that would have been a possibility if we would have not been going by what we thought we should be doing as a city in keeping and using an emergency proclamation for something that, as defined by us, was not an emergency anymore.
Well, I'm just saying, is there something that would prevent the council from voting to do that, to leave it open one more night, and the county would take it
That would be,
tomorrow?
well, that would be fine, but there's nobody to staff it, Barbara.
We're in the same position.
We're all in the same, we're all in the same position, so if we're gonna do something to keep something open, I think we would prefer working with your building, because this says you
I'm
can
fine
use
with
it.
it.
All right.
I would help staff, I'll be a staff.
I help staff.
Okay.
And
And Tyler said he would, and Jack said he would,
I'll
and
volunteer.
Barry said he would, and Rudd said he would, and maybe some other.
Through the Opportunity Council?
Moab that includes walking volunteers, and we weren't getting anybody. We got absolutely this many
maybe we need
people.
to spread that social media.
Yeah, well, that's fine, but they were contacting all their,
Everybody.
so we were doing all that.
Pardon me.
Pardon me, as somebody who helped
Go ahead.
take care of the folks out on Smith Road and spent every night with those individuals, all the way from Saturday on, we don't need to have quote-unquote trained individuals to man any of the shelters. What you need is people who treat other people like adults and human beings.
I know that's why.
Wait a minute, we had a couple of minor incidents where I ended up throwing some individuals out of the sheltering arrangement because they were disruptive to everybody else. But for the most part, the approximately 40 people that we helped out were absolutely calm and no problems whatsoever. Those of us who want to stand up and volunteer to do this will do it. You just need to put the word out and ask for the help, okay? I'll go tonight if I have to, and I just got off work. Second, don't let things like a lack of cots stop anything. They need to be in, out of the cold, period.
Yep.
And for those of you, again, who don't know me, I've got military survival training, including cold weather training. Anytime that temperature drops below 32 degrees, and especially when they get wet, they're going to get hypothermia, period. We need to get them out of the cold. Then we can worry about cots and blankets and all that other stuff, and you ask for it. So let's just find a way to say yes, please, okay? Let's quit saying no to everything.
And we also have, we rented extra porta potties, so we have 4 extra porta potties that we could move to a new location.
The garden.
Yeah.
They don't freeze.
Pinky. So they all freeze a little bit.
Just makes it less.
I used them.
So our game plan is to get the Civic Center garden room open and support the county to do so.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm asking now from the county or the leadership is, what do you need from us and how do we help get people and resources there?
I have people asking where Garden Street is, where.
Right across from the library.
It's not Garden Street.
It's not Garden
It's not
Street.
Garden Street.
It's a garden room
Garden room.
right across from the library. That used to be a restaurant downstairs.
It looks like a greenhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, used to be Islamic. Tyler,
I was
I'm
just
sorry.
It's on Commercial Street. It's commercial and lawn, right? So Tyler Schroeder, the Deputy Executive of the county, been working since was longer on this issue. So Pinky, your question was about coordination and how operation of the garden conference room would work, is that right?
Yeah, how can we, as elected officials, but also enlist the community to help make this happen?
So one of the biggest things, and there's more people in this room that know emergency planning than I do, but it has to do with coordination and similar decision-making between jurisdictions and endeavors. So if you've established in the city of Bellingham criteria on what weather and what circumstances require cold weather shelters to be implemented, the best coordination would be to understand that that criteria would probably also work for other jurisdictions, so that we could work together between tonight and the next time Bellingham runs in to the criteria being accomplished, to be able to fully operate the garden conference room. Because in that situation, we'd have 40 spaces, maybe a little bit more than that, more than what the city has at the Maritime, and we'd be able to plan out a little bit more between today
100%.
and maybe when the weather turns and we all, and City of Bellingham recognizes again that there is really need for a cold weather shelter in the City of Bellingham jurisdiction. That would be the first level of coordination. I don't know if there's enough time or enough coordination to work to understand to fully and safely operate the garden conference room tonight. As Jack said, we're going to try to accomplish that, because that's been the direction from the council and that's the administration tact. But if I was looking at coordination, I would look at how and when shelters are operated within your own city and understand that that's when you would coordinate with the county to keep those things.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. Yep, there needs to be more coordination, for sure. Barbara?
There needs to be, but we're talking about tonight.
Mhm.
And I, I would love to, give me a key and I'll open the garden room and I'll help staff it, but I just feel like since we're making a transition, It would be nice to have us both do it together, at least for tonight.
And we can do what we can do as individuals. We can bring materials. We can, I don't know exactly what you'd want us to do tonight.
Just set up a schedule of all of us staffing it. And I mean, I'll do late night.
Can your emergency management person do that the same way that Lynn did it for us?
I don't even know who ours is at the moment. I'm sorry.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. Just to clarify from the emergency management perspective, and the chief can chime in on this, to the degree that the sheriff's office emergency management has been engaged when this has totally been to support the city. So we don't have an independent activation or operation going from the emergency management end of things. We're basically doing our normal role of providing the volunteers, getting people registered.
And can you provide volunteers to them?
We have been doing that. Well, who's them?
The county. I mean, we were finding our own volunteers, and I thought that CERT volunteers and others, and we used, is it CODIS?
COAD.
We used COAD. We used all of that, and we ended up having myself and Peter and Michael and Hannah and others be the volunteers.
And I think through that coordination, the CERT team found 11 volunteers to continue to work in an operation. We anticipated that to be maritime because that was the request that we got from the city, the Department of Emergency Management. And the county was able to establish 2 facilities that made contact with Homes Now about the potential to continue sheltering for those individuals.
So one of the things that might be helpful is, Marcus?
Yes.
Since Jim's not here, I'll talk to you.
Okay.
Unless there's someone else I should talk to.
Sure. Anything I can help with.
One of the things that you have demonstrated is when people want to help and they don't know how to do it, they've been contacting you. They haven't been contacting us. They haven't been contacting emergency management. So if your staff, if your shelter is closed tonight, so you're not going to have the shelter in the county.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, could you help direct the volunteers that were at your shelter to come and help the county in the garden room?
Yes.
So they wouldn't have to do that.
Happy to do that.
That's
thank
easily
you
enough
very
done.
much. I appreciate
the
that.
active activists are the ones I like
Who
the
should be our
best.
point of contact so that we can let you guys know we're on our way?
Who
That
should
is
be
it.
their point of contact?
Who's in charge over there?
Tyler, who should be their
Maybe-
point of contact?
If Barbara wanted to call it, anybody, whatever.
We haven't determined at this point. I can give out my email address, and if you want to email me, I carry this thing 24/7.
Well,
We can give you ours.
So actually,
Just a sec.
this is where it's getting complicated because we're trying to transition from supporting a city operation to immediately flipping it over into a county operation that doesn't exist. So
Well, we didn't have
continue to.
Jeff.
Well, no, I mean,
We don't have anything that existed either. We put it
We made
together.
it.
Yeah, but
It was by
we're
well,
transitioning.
we had numerous people that were sent through emergency management to various locations, and at any rate, it just, if we're gonna do that, we wanna keep it consistent with what our personnel over at the EOC are doing, which would be running it through Shalice.
That would be helpful if you
They've
could
got
do
the
that.
expertise on that. I really would recommend not changing any directions and channels we've already got established, but I just wanted to reinforce that channel was not into the exec or any other county operation. That channel was into supporting.
And we did the same thing
the
with
city
Lynn,
operation.
and Lynn and Shalice
Well, they
talked to
actually,
each other.
well,
Did they?
that's exactly how our people do it. They
Yeah.
get the request from Lynn.
So what's
So we've been
Lisa's
operating
contact?
under every request, and that's the only thing they were doing, is operating on requests made to us from your emergency management.
Because we were
office.
operating our own.
So-
Now we're doing it together, and Lynn can't be the one because she
Well,
is
whoever is
burned out.
filling in for Lynn, that's who our people will,
I guess.
work with. So, as far as the county building location, we're gonna wait and see if that's even gonna be, at what point it's open and able to accept people.
Tyler,
But we
will
would
you take
continue to
these?
use our volunteer process at our emergency management.
That would be great. Thank you very much for that. And what if Homes Now has volunteers that would like to?
Tyler's got a question.
I was just gonna ask Marcus. Marcus, on Thursday, I had a conversation with Jim Peterson about how many people you had out of the church. I think there was about 26 people. I've heard you picked up a couple more people in the last couple of days. Of that,
They're a flighty bunch, so they come and go a little bit. But yeah, 20 to 30 is the range that we're playing with here.
on Thursday, there was a conversation with Jim that 16 of them were male and that they probably could utilize the mission. So I would ask, or at least request, since the mission has capacity, that would be the front door central location, because we're going to be in a short time to try to get a
Sure.
county
And I want you all to know that as we've been doing our outreach
Right.
from the very beginning, are you sheltered tonight? Would you consider going to the drop-in center or the mission? We run through all that before we finally land on, you're not coming in tonight any other way, then maybe we can still help you. By that time, you've done a little interview process too and gotten to recognize that they're not going to be too much trouble, so we can do that.
So hopefully those six.
Go ahead.
So hopefully those 16 males would have the ability, because there is capacity, as I mentioned, to stay at the mission or where that goes. My understanding on Thursday is there was two, or there was a family that was at the church.
We had a woman with her adult special needs son.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't going to be well to be separated.
Okay.
So there's that. We've had medical issues that don't do well.
And were you able in the last couple of days to contact the Opportunity Council for the Family Voucher Program and make a connection?
I am not familiar with that
Amy
outreach.
was working on that.
I've used it. The issue is you have to have young children, you have to have a kid under 18. So
Okay.
if you're an adult with a special needs son who's like 25, you don't qualify and they won't qualify for that voucher.
Okay. So
I'll pay for that voucher, okay? So that person isn't outside.
Okay, we'll see if
Do
we
you
can find them.
qualify then?
I'm set. It was really hard work to kind of get in and get the right paperwork, and I'm concerned about that access, but it's not really applicable right now.
Okay, but because I couldn't, you left and I didn't get to talk to you, I talked to the other woman, so sorry.
And this is JC, and JC Mansfield
I'd
is
also like to mention
really a
that
heavy
vouchers-
admin here.
The vouchers don't work for everyone. We did encounter taking some people to the hotels where they were on a DNR list, and they were not allowed in.
I understand. I've understood in the last couple of days after looking into the voucher program that it doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
Absolutely not.
So if Homes Now had about 26 people, 16 may or may not be able to go to the mission because they're males, and so that whittles it down to 10. It sounds like there may be an opportunity for contribution for the family to get put up in a hotel, and I'll leave that to the mayor. So are we talking about almost 8 people?
No, probably more than that.
Because we've had.
But as of Thursday.
Tyler, we've had at least 4 couples, okay?
Yeah, that was in the 8 left, because I understand
Yeah,
on
and
Thursday
and,
there was
given their
3 or 4
circumstances,
couples, so about 8
they're
people.
not gonna be willing to be separated from each other. So, in other words, the male half of the couple is not gonna go to the
He's already,
DNC.
that's what he's talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, okay.
So that would be 4 hotel rooms,
Probably.
4
That's
individuals
not
staying
counting the
separately,
ones that we have in hotels.
plus 1 couple.
Yeah, plus we have a bunch of people in hotels right now.
And are those people that are at Winter Haven?
No, it's above and beyond.
It's beyond that.
There's a number of, many of them have special reasons why they're.
For you better than we
Yeah,
can.
the last time, I'm not trying to articulate that I know more than you, I'm just trying to triage the situation
Yep.
and understand the numbers that we're talking about.
Yep.
So,
Jim's got a better handle on this.
and when I talked to Jim last time, there was 18 hotel vouchers, and he had indicated to me that that was the amount of people that were in Winter Haven.
Okay, but there are people above and beyond, because I know there are some staying where I'm staying right now.
And is there a way to have those individuals, I know it's cold, but it's like going to be above freezing tonight, to stay in the tents at Winter Haven?
That's happening on Monday, isn't it?
They're booked until Monday.
They're booked until Monday, and Jim.
Booked till Monday.
The people at Winter Haven are booked until Monday.
Oh, in the hotel.
Yes, which
and-
we are paying for.
They're covered.
And Jim has pledged that if it gets below 25, he's not going to
So
take him out.
So would the couples, would the couples that maybe are at the shelter but don't have hotel rooms be able to stay at Winter Haven because they don't have a
No, we have to vet everyone who comes to Winter.
We have
Haven.
everybody's got their stuff in their tents and everything
That's
else.
the requirement by
Personal stuff.
the
The
city.
city.
Right.
Personal
Yeah,
stuff
city
in the
requirement.
tent.
Right.
Can I do one thing, because we have a lot of people in the room? I am going to close the Emergency Management Council, so all of us. So we're closed, and then we continue the conversation operationally for people who.
That's fine, we can do that.
Well, except
Yeah.
one last thing.
Yes, Barbara.
Why don't we ask these folks, how much money they need for vouchers just for the night to give the county time to get things going? And everybody dig deep into your pockets who's in here.
Well, all I'm saying is that, yeah, that's kind of one of those operational things. So, and not everybody can qualify for a voucher.
Hey, Jeff, could you hang on?
So who's your point person?
I don't know, Jim.
Bring copies of the two things they just voted on.
We need a number, so these guys